welcome back to Ask Abby Dreyer. It is March 2021, and we are celebrating Women's History Month. And I wanted to actually not tell a story about a woman this week, but I wanted to tell a story about my first experience with toxic masculinity. And I'll explain why as we get through the story. But my father inadvertently gave me my first lesson in toxic masculinity. And my father is as far from toxic masculinity as you could ever see. He is a loving and doting father. He's a very playful uncle and just loves being around and playing with children. And when I was about 7, he was playing with my baby cousin with one of those like suction cup rattle toys, and he stuck the suction cup to his forehead. And the baby loved it, and everybody was having a good time. And then he took the suction cup off of his head and had a hickey on the front of his face. There was nothing that he could do about it, and he had to go to work the next day. And someone saw the massive circular bruise on his forehead and said, "Geez, did you get hit in the face with a racquetball or something?" Yes, racquetball. And I remember listening to that story going, why couldn't you just say that you had a toy on your forehead? Like, that's a great, funny story. But, this was in the 90s when it wasn't really cool for men to be loving and doting fathers. And it wasn't really considered professional to talk about, caring for family members. And so he kind of went with the racquetball story. And I remember thinking that was really weird. Now I know it as toxic masculinity, and there are much more worse examples of it. But that's just how insidious this can be, is that to feel afraid to share the fact that you had a lovely moment with your niece, that's what leads to this double burden that women have to bear. The fact that only women are allowed to have fun with babies. Only women are allowed to have, toy bracelets around their wrists because their kid made it for them. And to have to, not only make a sports reference, but a failed sports reference. It is better to get whacked in the face with a ball than it is to have played with your niece. I remember thinking that was really weird. And I was talking to my dad about, sharing this story. And he said, I was playing with my niece. It's the opposite of toxic masculinity. And that's true. What he was doing was the opposite of toxic masculinity, but the fact that the assumption was that it was sports, and the fact that he went with it was also kind of elusive to toxic masculinity. And he did ultimately, cop to the fact that he was just, a wonderful human playing with his niece and not a terrible racquetball player. But I think that's great too. I think that's how we start to break down these toxic ideas about gender roles and who can be a caretaker and who can be fun with, around children. And I think that's something that we definitely need to work on. And I think that as we are, expanding our view of feminism and what it means to help women around the world, there is also a strong need to help men be celebrated as caretakers as well. Because that is a wonderful thing that a lot of men don't get to outwardly enjoy. And that's a real shame. And I think that should change. So I'd love to hear in the comments if there are any of your own random toxic masculinity stories or how you pushed against it or something like that. Let's make this a fun one. And with that, I'll see you next week.